All right, this is going to be chapter 10, and we're talking about motivation. I think we have been thinking about that already, but what really does motivate people? I think the one thing I want to say is that most people, especially in the college age, in this classroom, if I ask you what motivates people, you're going to say money. Believe it or not, what you're going to learn, believe it or not, is money is not the motivating factor. Also, it is something that you don't have control of. You want better workers, what? You just keep writing them more money, more money? Well, it doesn't necessarily always work to have more money. There's other things, and of course we're going to find out that things like respect and ownership and things like that might work. Here, take a look at, I like to pull out these stories of featured businesses, and here's New Belgium, up here, right here, hometown favorite, New Belgium Brewing, fat tire. What motivation do they have? Well, you get a bicycle, and maybe you get a trip, maybe you get ownership, and that's something that's pretty popular for people to take on there. So think about two types of rewards. Intrinsic is what you feel good about yourself, pride in your performance, you've done something. We always like to think that we have that. If I ask you, are you intrinsic, okay, which means you're strongly motivated to do good work, or are you extrinsic, which means that somebody else has to tell you that you did a good job? If I ask you that question, I think the proper answer is it depends on the job, right? If you love what you're doing, you take pride in what you're doing. If you got a great company that you work for, you feel like you're working for something. And that's what all this study is going to tell us, is that if you're actually feeling like you're working for your own personal satisfaction, people do better. Employees work much better. So what we've talked about in this chapter is really a lot of different scientific ways of looking at how to motivate people, or how to get people to work, how to get people to work efficiently. UPS, FedEx, and all the delivery guys are really good with that. Imagine you got a job with FedEx or UPS here, and it says, okay, I want you to make our route drivers more efficient. Well, what are you going to do? One thing interesting that they did is they said, we're going to plan our route, because we have the technology. We can punch it up at Google Maps and figure out where we're going, and plan our route so that we only make right turns. FedEx did that years ago, and they saved millions of dollars because they're not spending time wasting all their time going into traffic on a left turn. They just go around the block, right hand, turn. It ended up saving them money. Who would have thought that? Well, take a study, try to make things more efficient. If you work at UPS, you might say, okay, here's a good way to get out of the truck without injuring yourself. You don't want that. So you want to get that stuff, that information out there so that the efficiency will happen. And that's what a scientific method is. That's a scientific method. There's a number of theories. In the beginning of the chapter, the first theory is about Mayo and Hawthorne talking about how we think that if it's too hot you can't work, or if it's too cold. No, that wasn't really the truth. It was, if you feel like you're going somewhere with this company, your productivity is going to be better. So in the last 20 or 30 years, we've gotten better at efficiency. I talked about that recently. Efficiency has gone up because we're looking at changing things to make sure that people are doing efficient work quickly. Once we get to a maximum efficiency, you have to start looking at, are people happy with their work? And if they're happy with their work, they're going to be motivated to do a good job. So I'm not going to go into each theory, different types of theories between theory Z, theory A. I would say that Japanese management in the past 30 or 40 years has become very well studied, and it's a very good model. A lot of what they do is they work collectively as groups. You probably realize that as a group working together with their culture, that works pretty well. Americans are more independent, and we look around for jobs as we move around and things like that. So I think the point is that managers have to work within these two theories, and here's a good way to kind of modify and do the best of both worlds, or work with both sides of that. So do you love your job? Do do you want to get up and go to work every day? Now, maybe right now you got a low-end job, you're not really liking it, Subway sandwich or something like that. It's not good. But think about a career job. You want to have people. You want to hire people that like what they're doing and have self-motivation. And believe it or not, there's a job out there that everybody loves. There's something that you want to do, and it can be done. Finding self-motivation and personal motivation is important. Here's a little word about something I talked about with the Japanese management, but high context and low context cultures. High context cultures are group oriented, and they work together. Low context cultures like the United States, we build relationships and we pass tasks out as we do it. So there's kind of two different ways to go. What works? It depends. Depends on what kind of business. It depends on what type of personality that you're working with too. Speaking of personality, in today's modern workforce, we have a huge range of ages. And we're finding that there's maybe baby boomers don't get along with Generation X, or millennials. Millennials and Generation X are having some difficulties. Here's one more. Here's Generation Z, a more modern one. So I'm going back to baby boomers, Generation X, millennials. I think it's really difficult to lump personalities all in one. If somebody said, oh, baby boomers are all like this, I would take exception. They're not. It is okay to make some assumptions that it's okay to realize that some people are raised one way and some people are raised different ways. In other words, if you're working with millennials, millennials will always have technology right there ready to go. I think the point is that understanding how those dynamics work is going to make for a more productive workforce, more productive company. So just understanding how that works is what's important. Understanding what these different generations bring to the table. Many companies show that baby boomers and millennials and Gen X and Gen Z and all those guys can certainly work together just great. It's good to know who you're dealing with. Generation Alpha, I don't know if anybody's out there with I don't know what that is. Maybe it'd be interesting to kind of find out. Here's a good example about personalities in business. Here's the older generation. 90% of them want telephone calls. Okay, 64% for baby boomers. We're all moving towards less phone calls and more phone apps is fine. I would disagree with that. I go with phone app all the time, but again, you can't generalize. You think this is more realistic? I'd say so. Text and email, for sure. Big chunks of communication want to go to text and email. Social media, I'm less inclined to go through Facebook on messages. I don't like that. And it's growing. And the last one is online chat. That's fine too. But you can see, just dealing with different people, it kind of gives you different ways of working with them based on where they're kind of from here. So anyway, that's a quick shot on how to motivate employees, Chapter 10. Thank you.